Interrupt you, I please ask you to have a seat because we are starting in just a few minutes, few seconds would be better. So please have a seat. I want to say welcome to all the distinguished panelists, stakeholders, dear viewer that are following us by the screen, by the video streaming, everybody present here. We are about to focus maybe the most important aspect of this forum, the third forum for the European strategy of the macro-Adriatic and Ionian macro-region. As you know, during these days, many sessions have taken place with extensive discussions in relation of the four strategy pillars of this strategy. That's blue growth, connecting the region, environmental quality and sustainable tourism, as well as other cross-cutting issues as, for example, migration flows that, as you can imagine, affects all the countries of the region, and not only the countries of the region. Now we have to find what commitments have achieved, and because we need to bring out new challenges, new areas, and new ways of potential cohesion and cooperation in the region. Because we have in front, you have in front specialized persons, specialized people that are professors, technicians, engineers that are working every day on how to make real proposals and commitments. So they can report us, and that's what they are going to do, what happened in this parallel session and side events to see what tools can finance the strategy. I'm going to present them. It's a pleasure for me. So it's Sergio Garriba from Ministero dello Sviluppo Economico. It's for Transport and Development Cohesion, Energy Networks and Market Integration. Colin Wolf, DG NEAR, European Commission, Financing Connecting the Region. Jean-Pierre Alken, Head of Unit, DG Region, European Commission, Finance and Sustainable Tourism. Oliviero Montanaro, Head of Unit, Marine Coastal Protection and International Affairs for Eco-Connectivity and Financial and Environmental Quality. Christos Economou, DG Mare, European Commission, Financing Blue Growth. Stefano Bianchini, University of Bologna for Territorial Potential Connected to Migration Flows. Alex Gnamos, Joint Research Center, European Commission for Research and Innovation, and Professor Patrizio Bianchi, Emilia-Romagna Region for Adrian, MED, and Resilience of Territory to Natural Disaster. So I'm going to ask you, welcome to you all, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I ask you to answer if you can, but I'm sure you can in 3 or 5 minutes, because we would like to ask of each of you to tell what came up exactly for your panel session, trying to explain us why your projects or priority action you decide are so relevant for all the other countries, for the entire macro region as a whole, so for all of us. So please, we can start with Sergio Garriba. Transport and energy, please.
Yes, thank you for the question, which is very challenging. I would say in our parallel sessions on transport and energy networks, were 2 parallel sessions yesterday, we were considering, the new challenges or the changing challenges, how to accelerate social and economic development in the region, how to make a value of local resources, including enterprises, how to face climate change, how to face the problems of digitalization of economies. And our reply was accelerate and develop connectivity. Connectivity means new transport interconnections, new energy grids, networks, and interconnections. Projects were discussed. Those projects are involving number of countries, and it depends upon, the projects which were identified. I assume this discussion is going on within other multilateral organizations as well, And we had some hints from Sofia, where the heads of state met regarding the region. Now, I don't want to quote, I'll say the single projects. I'll say that there are, say, around 30 projects in the transport area, about the same number regarding energy networks. Some of the projects require some political convergence, such as the formation of a single energy market, which has been a power market in the region, a gas trading hub to improve the security. There are long, say, railways and highway corridors, intermodal, say, transport, which should be fostered. Regarding all these projects, we thought it was, and it is needed, to think of master plans with some time horizon, which could be either the year 2030 or beyond that date as well. You know that projects require investments, which might be of the order of billions of euros. So those investments have a long life. As a consequence of that, the time horizon we have to keep in our mind should be short, medium, and long. Master plans would help to identify gaps, would help to identify what the governments may wish to do in order to harmonize procedures, harmonize rules, harmonize norms, and keep together, say, the regulators when those are needed. Of course, stakeholders are part of the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gariba. I'd like to ask the same question to Colin Wolfe for financing connecting the region. You come from the European Commission, the engineer, European Commission. So what came out from the parallel session, and what's the point you think it's important for all of us?
I think one of the interesting things, the discussion this morning, the discussions yesterday, is that in terms of financing what we want to do in terms of transport and energy, some people actually know how to work the system pretty well. And the reason for that, so I think what the strategy should do, the people here should do, is maybe concentrate on where they can do something special. Now, what was coming out was that there already, in relation to energy or in relation to transport, there are very, very comprehensive plans, the 10T transport connections, the core corridor, or you see these wonderful maps that have been developed by the energy experts, electricity, gas, and so on. And the people that, particularly the enterprises that are going to build the infrastructure, the gaps, fill the gaps that are there, they know, because they're big enterprises, they know, first of all, what they've got to do. They know how to put together a good project in terms of its scope, in terms of how it brings in different sources of finance, in terms of how it addresses environmental impact assessments, all the, if you like, that's. So they know the system, and that works, well, it works okay. But what was emerging this morning is that there's a whole lot of other people with very important ideas in terms of what is needed in transport or in energy that don't know how to go about getting that finance to put the projects together. Now, there were some interesting examples mentioned in relation to energy. There was mention of islands, quite a feature of the Adriatic Ionian region. And quite a number of these, there's ideas about how they can be self-sufficient in terms of providing their energy needs. People know what they want to do, but what they don't know is how to put together the financing to make that as much of a reality as possible. Same for intelligent logistics, you know, where companies, there's ideas about how you can make sure that goods are delivered in a better way, more energy efficient or more quick or whatever it is. Great ideas, forward-looking ideas, but the people who've come with them don't know how to make sure or get to the point where those can become a reality. And one big important lesson, one recommendation, if you like, is I think the EU strategy for the Adriatic and Ionian region and priority area 2, the coordinators, wherever they are, if they were able to provide that facility, which is almost a sort of a framework platform in between, on the one hand, those ideas and the project promoters, and the way in which it can be financed. And the interesting thing is that indeed there are many sources for that financing out there. And one of the points made was that it could have been true 4 or 5 years ago that in general we hadn't got our act together in doing that. But now, and Mrs. Spiraki, MEP, she made the point, listen, Europe actually, and countries and people have got now, they've discovered how to crowd in the private sector, they've discovered how to provide credit lines for small and medium enterprises, they know how to support the smaller scale types of initiatives. It's just that there's an awareness raising issue. That was one point. Second point, which actually is very obvious for this region, enormous scope for sharing of good practice. Yeah. And that's true in any region, but it's maybe particularly true in this region where, listen, the countries involved are coming from, they're in different how should I, political situations. And this opportunity to share good practice is really crucial. There was one very interesting point made, which is that in transport, 85% of investment, of grant support in the EU countries goes towards green transport. In the Western Balkans, 85% goes for what? It goes for roads. Now, the point there is there's a lack of a sort of a link up in terms of the approach. So there's a lot of opportunity to do that better and to share good practice.
It depends on what, according to you, is difference?
What's?
I mean, the difference, this different point of view from the Western Balkans.
Well, I don't know that it's a different point. Partly it's a question of needs. Partly it's a question of the opportunity, perhaps, to find a way in which you can develop the green approach more in the whole region and make sure, and this is surely I think the important role that the strategy can play, the priority can play, is to sort of develop a sort of common idea of what we want to do so that we don't have this very big disparity in terms of objectives.
Okay.
Those were the two big messages that came from what I was involved with.
Okay, thank you. Colin Wolf, I'd like to know from Oliviero Montanaro, that's the head of Unit Marine Coastal Protection and International Affairs for Eco-Connectivity and Financing Environmental Quality, if the issues are the same, the questions are the same for that.
Well, thank you. Partially. I need to start by two preliminary comments. First, this macro-regional strategy is called Adriatic Ionian strategy because it has been built around two seas, the Adriatic Sea and the Ionian Sea. So is one of the strategy that is strongly sea-oriented. And this is relevant because the sea is a common heritage and a common needs that deserve a common effort to be preserved and sustainably used. And this is a strong challenge. The second, to do so, we have to ensure the so-called environmental dimension of the strategy, because it is the only chance to ensure that in the long run, the use that we made of our seas and coasts is sustainable. Otherwise, we spend our basis. This is why, in our pillar, we, the 8 countries that are participants, have agreed to focus on a limited number of strategic projects. 4 projects that are relevant not only for the specific pillar, but that might strongly contribute to ensure the environmental dimension of the whole strategy. I mentioned them very shortly.
Sure.
The first is the project to address the risk of major pollution incident at sea through contingency plan, emergency plan, that should involve all the countries of the region.
Yeah, that's the point, that it affects all the country.
The second is how to better protect marine biological resources, in particular toward the increasing risk of marine litter that is at the top row of all political agenda in terms of protection. And this again is a challenge that we cannot succeed to address if we do not collaborate. No country could solve its marine litter issues alone. The third is how to better ensure habitat and species toward eco-connectivity. That means something that is more than national relevance activity. We do need to work together. And the fourth is maritime spatial planning. That means take into consideration all human activities at sea and ensure that they are compatible to each other and are also sustainable toward the environmental dimension. This is the strategic goal of our pillar. We are now in the phases to try to transform these project ideas in concrete projects with the help of the facility point, because we do need projects. First, because projects are the best chance to concretely work together to deliver concrete results. Otherwise, we remain at the theoretical level. Yes. So we do need projects to work together, all together. But project needs funding. And this is the second part of the issue. And we are here. The risk that we see, and this is the message of the TSG3, is that so far the strategy as a whole have not yet managed to ensure a strategic and overall view on the global priorities. So far, each pillar are too much separated to each other. We do need to identify and implement a strategy by which the common strategy, all the pillars, could go to the managing authority of funds and say, okay, this is the priorities of the EUSAIR strategy, not the pillar 1, 2, 3, or 5. Otherwise, we run the risk that at the end of the day, one or more than one pillar might be left behind. And this will be a risk and a pity because all the pillars are strategic and all are needed to contribute to the overall result and success of the EUSAIR strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask to Jean-Pierre Alken, it's head of UNIDG Region, European Commission for Financing Sustainable Tourism, TSG4. So that's the point we were talking about. I'm not asking you about, obviously, funds and stuff like that, but I want to know if this sensibility, that if you felt the same sensibility, the same questions that Montanaro was talking to us, so that we have to find something that affects all other countries and an idea to implement all the activities to make them real, not only ideas and wishes. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. Are we using the mic? Yes, thank you. So the panel was extremely targeted and focused on the way we can deliver on sustainable tourism. But basically, we've been discussing about looking at 5 different elements. First, having a clear picture of what sustainable tourism means, both in terms of fact and figures, and also what is the word sustainable meaning to tourism. Then we did look at the current EU support. We also looked at concrete example of
Yes.
what is going on, and afterward we looked at the way forward and the challenges in front of us. Starting with the global picture. In the European Union, WTC assessed that in the next 10 years, tourism has the potential to create more than 5 million jobs in the European Union alone, and to increase the GDP by 1,600 billion, which is basically the GDP of Italy, the fourth largest economy in the European Union. When we look more closely at the region covered by EUSAIR, which is partly in the European Union and partly outside, it is assessed, notably through a World Bank report, that tourism represents 14 to 15% of the GDP of the countries whenever summed up. So it is a massive economic
You can
sector.
tell.
And what is more interesting is that the growth in tourism is above 10% globally. So 5 times the growth of the European Union during the last years, and it was cumulated over 3 years. So it is really a trend which is very encouraging and drawing the attention that it is a field we should not neglect if we want to support job and growth, which is at the heart of the EUSAIR strategy. Then we did ask ourselves what is sustainable meaning when we speak about tourism, and then that's very interesting because it leads us to have a comprehensive approach that goes beyond the GDP and beyond the number of jobs. It means that we need to look at all the aspects of tourism. There is no tourism without mobility, that's for sure. Then it means that if we want to have sustainable tourism, we need to understand what is sustainable mobility next to it, for instance. There is no sustainable tourism if the jobs which are created are not sustainable, and there we keep in mind that sustainability means environmental, economic, but also social. So the jobs have to be decent and they have to be long-term. That's something very important. And then it means that the enterprises which are involved in tourism needs to be extremely competitive. And this is where we also look at what are the tools that we can help to support competitiveness of those enterprises. But it is also a sector that needs to have a lot of innovation. And there we have the paradox of working in a sector that requests a lot of innovation, but most of the tools that we have for innovation, and in particular Horizon 2020, are perceived as helping the cream of the cream, the excellence of the excellence. And there also we have to look at the way we can support the innovation needed. So after browsing at what is needed to support sustainable tourism, we also looked at what is the current state of play of support provided by the European Union. And their presentation made by colleagues were extremely useful to show that we are already heavily committed into that. Just in Italy, which was a bit the focus of the presentation of some colleagues, we heard that the ERDF, which is the European Regional Development Fund, is investing more than 1.4 billion in the 7 years from 2014 to 2020 in tourism and cultural heritage. But it is not the only fund supporting tourism. The colleagues working in rural development are also promoting rural tourism with an investment which is close to 700 million just for Italy. So we are there already exceeding 2 billion, and everyone can agree that this is massive investment. Then we were provided also with example of support provided by DG Employment to make sure that both the type of job but also competitiveness of the enterprises was at the level we expect. And there also, I'm also expecting feedback from the B2B session, which was supported by DG Grow, which is another way to involve the private sector in this type of activity. And then we were also provided by DG RTD, which is behind the Horizon 2020 initiative, of the way we can support initiative in the wider Europe context for the regions which are not always having the capacity to be at the top of the excellences, but that have to implement innovation. So that was extremely interesting. Then we were provided example on the way we can support tourism by, for sure, protecting the cultural heritage and being in this exceptional venue. We were particularly inspired about sustainable tourism, but also by the way we can broaden the range of tourists, for instance, by allowing also disabled people to be part and become full tourists, but also by the way new technologies must enter into the game of tourism. And then we looked also at the role of macro-regional strategies. And maybe for me there, the difference compared to the environmental presentation is that whenever we speak about environment, we know that working together is a must. We must divide the responsibility. We must share the effort in order to address the issue of marine litter, to address the issue of telluric pollution in the sea. It is a must. There is no other option. But tourism and sustainable tourism is more an opportunity to seize. But as an opportunity, it is not a low-hanging fruit. It will require a lot of coordination. Coordination among all the level of governance, from national, regional, local, but also with the private sector. And this is where the challenge ahead of us is, and it is for us to take it. Thank you.
How could you overcome this difference?
Well, we can overcome it by planning better together. That's really the key word that we have
So the way is the same.
I mean, it is not more of the same that is going to satisfy the need for improving our efficiency. We already heard that we are investing massively, and I forgot also to speak about the importance of sustainable tourism whenever we speak about our approach towards the Western Balkans. It is more than an economic activity. It is a way to build partnership and confidence between those countries. But the way forward is not by more of the same. It is really by strengthening the cooperation between all the stakeholders and making sure that the multi-level governance that we speak about when we refer to macro-regional strategies is working and delivering for the type of private sector that we are working with. And compared to other fields of intervention, if we speak about transport, energy, there we have very big, often very big actors. They are able to speak to government at the right level. Whenever we speak about tourism, we speak about small and medium enterprises. And there the challenge is to provide them with a way to engage with us and for us to be able to listen to them. So that's really a different mindset that we need to have. And I believe that was something that came very explicitly during the very interesting presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Khan. I'd like to give the floor to Christos Economou, DG Mare European Commission, about financing blue growth. So another specific pillar, please.
Yes, thank you very much.
I think you're, okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, blue growth, it is really understood and very well understood in the context of the EUSAIR, because as mentioned earlier, it's the two Cs that bring the countries together in these macro-regional strategies, and all the challenges that are around the preservation and the sustainability bring also opportunities. The panel we had this morning looked into how the work progresses on developing further the blue economy among these 4 countries. And I think I was personally very pleased from the European Commission side to see that they work very seriously in giving priority to certain projects, focusing the work, as I heard is happening elsewhere, because indeed resources are there, but they need to be put together to these common objectives. I think from the panel, we had really also focused on the different possibilities for financing blue growth. That was the theme of the panel. And there we saw also that the possibilities that they come through the traditional funds, also the regional funds, the Horizon 2020, they are all there, but there is still room for better coordination. The potential, for instance, between what happens in Horizon 2020 and specifically the Blue Med initiatives, which bring these specific blue growth objectives together, there is even more to be done at the EUSAIR context. This initiative is open to all countries, not EU countries. It started like an EU initiative developing blue economy and research and innovation in blue economy. Now it's open to all countries, and there is more to be done from non-EU side of EUSAIR in that. So that was a clear message. Then we also heard how different cross-border projects that are active already in the region can work in coherence with the strategic objectives of the EUSAIR. We had concrete examples involving Italy, Montenegro, Albania, Croatia. These were all highlighted really how the mentality of EUSAIR progressed through these structures and how they can work in coherence, promoting projects that fall within EUSAIR and the objectives of Pillar 1, which is blue growth. We also heard how the clustering, with specific example of Italy, can promote really this stakeholders community, the administrations, the regions, to work together in promoting projects, in tapping to the finance which is there. Then we heard also how some more local initiatives, for instance from the port of Piraeus, can be used for developing blue growth in the context of the EUSAIR, and how this can be promoted elsewhere within the Adriatic and Ionian region. So we had really a very broad spectrum of interventions. Also how the private sector, looking into alternative fuels for green shipping, can also gain funding through projects of the EUSAIR promoting different objectives, as we heard. And last but not least, we highlighted also the need for the private involvement, the private funding involvement into the work which is happening for promoting blue economy and blue growth. And there, I think there is need to bring really the funding towards the startups, and there is also interest from the funding community outside the classic funds towards the blue growth. And this was really highlighted in our intervention. From DG Mare perspective, we work in setting up such a platform for blue investment, and I think this is very well appreciated, I think, and I hope we will contribute to the work of Pillar 1 and EUSAIR particularly with this work. So this is overall what I can resume from this morning discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Economo. Now I'd like to ask Stefano Bianchini, University of Bologna, because we know there are some cross-cutting issues that you talking about during these days. So, especially for territorial potential connected to migrant flows. So, what did came up from this panel?
Well, as you know, this is a topic that is not among the 4 pillars of the EUSAIR, but is included into the transversal skills that have to be developed, particularly after the summit in Ioannina and Dubrovnik. It has been claimed by the Commission to emphasize. So we had actually a very lovely panel with a lot of questions, a lot of discussion. We have particularly focused on the peculiarity of the macro region from this point of view. Actually, we have identified through a research project that has been supported by ESPON and with the integration of the network of stakeholders led by the region Emilia-Romagna, we have identified 4 main flows for migration in the region, not just one. The first floor is the floor within the borders of the states, the existing states. There is a clear flow from the countryside to the cities. And we have seen both in terms of flows in relative terms, but also in absolute terms, that cities like Tirana, Belgrade, Skopje, even Budapest have a concentration, yes, in the Nadumian area, but this is a concentration of between the 20 and 30% of the population. Just to give you an example, okay, it's different context, but in Italy, Rome is 4.5% of the population. So this is just to give you a comparative example. But this is not, this is one point. The second floor is the floor within the macro region. The people of the macroregion moved within the macroregion for several reasons, or because they are displaced people, and this is the legacy of the Yugoslav secession wars, or they are moving in search of job. And this is a case, for instance, just to give an example, the Albanians that moved to Greece and Italy in the 90s, and then because of the crisis of 2008 came back, but not necessarily in their own country. So there is this second flows that interact with the third one that across the region. This is the reason why, for instance, people that moved within the region joined the Balkan route, for instance, when this happened in the peak we had in 2015-16. And so the third floor is connected to people that are coming even from outside the region and cross the region in order to join Northern Europe mainly, the Danubian or even the northern countries, Scandinavian countries, Germany, Belgium, Britain, and so on and so forth. Then there is the fourth flows, because these people are rejected. And they come back again. And they come back again, but not necessarily in the country they were come from. So they come back in the region, and they try to move for opportunities into the region. Please consider also that this aspect is connected to another aspect, the population.
Right.
Countries like Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Albania, and outside Bulgaria had recorded a sharp decline of the population between the 10 and the 20% in the last 20 years.
That's right, yeah.
So this is again shows that there are lots of territories that are abandoned in this moment, because I mentioned also the flows to the cities, to the capitals. So what happens? What are the main recommendations under these conditions that came out from our discussion? The first one is to invite the national statistic offices to harmonize their own data, to make them comparable, because there are no comparable data in the region. And so this is the first key point, because this is very important in order to make then actions, and particularly to consider under this condition that, and this is the second point, to consider that migration is not an emergency, is a fact, and needs a strategy, a long-term strategy, how to manage migrations into the macro region, which means that this requires a great strategy in reinforcing territorial cohesion.
So what do you mean we can stop it?
Territorial cohesion in the whole region, yes. Because, for instance, take into consideration the fact that there are people that are moving from rural areas. They will be easily, most probably, integrated into rural areas in the micro-region than to put in the ghettos in the peripheries of the cities.
Oh, right.
So this means that we need, and they can be useful not only, for instance, for agriculture, but also for the protection of the ecosystem, for instance, working in the forests or preserving the cleanliness of the waters or the rivers. So this means just that we have to invent sometimes even the jobs, also because we must know that the pupils that are going to the schools right now, in 20 years from now, they will find jobs that today do not exist. And this is another great challenge that we have to consider, the fast way how the situation is going to move. And this is the reason why we have insisted on policies that try to have the first multi-level governance, in the sense that the different territories need to have similar competencies, for instance, imaging regions, Jupania, districts, cantons, and so on and so forth, in such a way that they can interact actively.
That's not easy, because you know, we've got so different countries.
Exactly, different countries, but this is a very important point, that we put together, working together, governments, regions, cities, other stakeholders, universities and school system. Because we cannot forget that among the migrants, there are lots of minors. And these minors are not accompanied by their own families. And this is a very important point. They have to be included. So how can we create an inclusive policy in order to allow these people to find opportunities within countries that are suffering from this depopulation and movement. Even Italy, prospectively, is clear that in the 20, 30 years from now, we'll have a sharp decline in the population. According to the Istat data, in 2045, 50, Italy can have 54 million of people. So this is something that Italy will join the Balkans in this sense in the next future if we don't have a strategy. And so for this reason, what is important is to have a strategy also where the universities and the school system are actively involved in terms of public engagement. This is something that is not only teaching and research that are the typical activities of this university, but also public engagement. So and this is something that is required in the third mission. So this is so matching the migrant experience with the territorial needs and increasing territorial cohesion and the cooperation of the different players in such a way that they can work in defining integration strategies for the region. So these are some of the most relevant aspects that emerged during our panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bianchini. It's very interesting that the cross-cutting issue on migration is something that really affects on all the countries, not only in the macro region. So I'd like to know from Alec Namus, Joint Research Center, European Commission for Research and Innovation. So which research environment is proposed to spur cooperation in this field and which objectives for you?
First of all, good afternoon. We had an interesting workshop that was done in parallel with the business to business in front of the main event. So we consider it was actually a success to have around between 60 and 70 people. We had 10 discussants, 10 nice presentations, very committed speakers. We had 3 very different panels, actually. I will read them out so that you know. But what we did, we prepared actually slides that would sum up every panel discussion, but I will not go into details here because we don't have time, so we can put them on the website so that people can read them out later. But I think it's important to actually at least state the panel titles. So the first one was on reinforcing innovation capacities and ecosystems, with a focus on smart specialization and funding synergies. The second one was on examples and good practices from clusters and research systems. And the third one was on boosting public-private investments in the EUSAIR and how to maximize the EU funding opportunities for the valorization of research results. So I would do actually injustice to go now and present just some parts of the discussions of the presentations that were ranging from blue growth to cultural heritage, to industrial modernization, agro-food, to energy. So what I would like to actually rather decide a few minutes was more like on a more strategic discussion that would be kind of food for thought for perhaps later orientation of the strategy itself. Namely, all my distinguished colleagues from the panel, they were talking about projects and about the necessity for collaboration and necessity for connecting different pillars. And we firmly believe that innovation, research and innovation, which are by default connecting people, are the right thing to do so. We have certain experiences from the other, in JRC, I'm talking, from the other macro-regional strategies, and it's a fact that in other macro-regional strategies, research-oriented and research and SMEs or competitiveness, it has its own pillar, whereas here it's a cross-cutting issue. This might be a very good thing, but it might be also a very tricky thing, because as you know, the pillars, they have countries behind, so they have committed people that are kind of bringing this forwards and so on, whereas the cross-cutting activity does not have this kind of support. And that's how somehow it is being kind of put aside. It clearly shows, for example, our event, our workshop that was lasting the whole morning yesterday was actually outside the main event, which means that there were quite a few people that basically were just arriving when we had this event. So plus, it was actually, maybe it's a small criticism to the organization side, that it has been actually organized back to back with the business-to-business session. So we were basically targeting through the innovation ecosystem the businesses, which are the most important part where the innovation is actually happening. So by default, all these people have been in another workshop at the same time, so they could not participate to our workshop, which is a bit of loss for the discussion and so on. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that well, while it is clear that all the thematic pillars like blue growth, like environment, energy, connectivity, transport, also cultural heritage and so on, all these pillars are basically building on some research innovation results in order to stay competitive, advance in the thinking and the collaboration and so on. So it would make very much sense to actually put research and innovation into a more central role and see how this can also help connecting different pillars. I think that my colleagues would agree. Yeah, actually, Mr. Montaro actually mentioned before, sorry, actually mentioned before this, and we firmly believe that there is a room for research and innovation to be placed more centrally in between the pillars and help connecting the pillars. So perhaps for as a food for thought also for the more strategic planning of the macro-region strategy, maybe it would make sense to somehow firstly improve the ownership of the issue, because there is no country behind. You have behind each pillar you have two countries. Behind the cross-cutting issue of research, innovation and SMEs competitiveness, there's nobody. So as I said, it may be a good thing, but it may also be a very tricky thing. So far, this is the third annual forum, and I've been participating to all the three, so this is the third time I'm in this community, and there was no attempt to really kind of bring in, even in the debates, of course, as they have been parallel, I was not able to participate to all of them, but to the extent I was, of course, people were talking about certain projects and so on, collaboration, but the research and innovation component and this kind of innovation ecosystems that is crucial for integration of the SMEs, of the knowledge into the community of each pillar was not really there. So perhaps at this point, I'm finishing. It makes perhaps sense to consider for these strategic thinkers to see how to improve the ownership of the research and innovation cross-cutting activities in order to boost all the four thematic pillars. And as far as ourselves, JRC, we are happy to help with that and to participate, but it's up, of course, to the 8 countries, soon to be 9 perhaps, to discuss and decide how to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask from Professor Bianchi something more. May I ask you to do a summing up of what we heard this morning?
Wow.
So just, 3 main subjects, issues that did emerge in this debate, so we can focus it.
Okay,
please.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you to everybody. I arrived here Tuesday. I had Med, after that we have Adrian, after that we have this quantity of things, and I was really impressed by the enormous quantity of projects, programs, activities that we are producing in this area. But in the meantime, I was impressed by the fact that we are not able, not yet at least, able to offer a comprehensive vision of all these activities. So that, because after us are coming the national coordinators, I think that it's important that you discuss how can we provide a common joint communication of all we are doing all together. On the other side is just the list. There's a list of things, a list of projects. The second idea, if the first is more vision, we need more vision beyond the specific program, beyond the specific activity. The second is strategy. Strategy means the capacity to orientate, to give a direction, and also to control, a process of structural change. Structural change means that in the long run, the capital is changing. And we are doing a lot of things in order to change the common capital of the area. Sergio Gariba explained quite well before that when we are looking to connect the different cities of this area, we are changing the capital of the area. But you are right, huh? There is another capital that is extremely important, that is human capital. I feel that probably we have to discuss more on human capital because I am not sure that in the area we have talent, competencies, capacities, able to take all the advantages of this kind of investment. We have to invest more. We have to invest more in research and innovation, and we have to invest more in our people, both in private and in public structure. Otherwise, we are just asking money to the Commission, but this is not enough. Subsidy is not enough. The other thing that is relevant is, it is very clear, structural change means today to couple development and sustainability. It is clear that strategy in this moment means what Oliviero said. We have 4 pillars, but the next step for the strategy is how can we integrate the 4 pillars into one vision, long run. Which is the future of this area in 2040, 20 years? We are living in a period that there is such an uncertainty that we really don't know what happened tomorrow morning in this country. I don't know in the other country. Huh? I'm speaking on my country. But we have to speak and to think and to reason in the long run. Otherwise, there are no investment. If we are not able to provide the vision of stability in the area in the next 20 years, there are no investment. No investment.
Professor,
just subsidy.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but according to you, who can drive this changing of mind? Because that's the point.
Oh, sure, ourselves.
Ourselves, okay.
Ourselves. Because we cannot be commissioned by the Commission. Sorry for the game. The story is that what I see in this discussion is that everybody is still speaking on the basis of nation organization. I'm just looking that when we are going to see how can we put together the people, we are not speaking about the communities, we are not speaking about the territories, we are not speaking about the regions, but still speaking in terms of national governments. And I think this is a limit. This is an explicit limit, because we have to work much more on community. We have an interesting discussion yesterday about resilience. Resilience is another word that in only a few months can be unacceptable, because it's like smart, it's like sustainability, is such a word that everybody is using. Resilience means simply that a community can resist to external shock if it's really a community. So I think it is another duty that I give to the national coordinators. How can we do in the next program, because it's clear that we need the next program in the area. First, to strengthen the sense of an area, of a common region. This hour is relevant. I'm not sure that everybody here is considered this is our region. Cooperation, territorial cooperation, is not international cooperation, it's different. We are looking to integrate the area. And when we are speaking about integration, means that I am here and you are here, working together, I'm changing myself in order to work with you. It's complementarity, it's smart complementarity, the key of the story. This is one discussion that we have continuously inside CRPM. I see here Eleni Mariano, and she knows quite perfectly that this is one of the things that we are continuously discussing. So I feel that at this moment we have to recuperate the sense of vision, the common vision of our region, asking frankly to ourselves, if we consider this our region, or simply the collection of different states with different local interests. And second, strategy. That means a long-run perspective. And so that the capacity to orientate all the activity that these gentlemen said together within one common final objective. So that we need more vision and more strategy. But this is what we ask on one side to our national coordinators and on the other side to the Commission. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you so much. I don't know if there are any questions I'd like to know from... Thank you, Professor. If there are some questions from the audience and from Giada Platania, that's Head of International Affairs Unit at BNB. Is there, I'm sorry. Hi. If you have any questions for the audience, to the professor or to the other.
I just want to take the words from, keep continuing on this.
For sure.
The three words I keep on hearing, yesterday I was here at the forum, today are three, and they keep on running in my mind. Concreteness,
yes,
integration, collaboration. And it's with these three words clear in mind that 10 years ago, the European Commission set up the Enterprise Europe Network, which I have the honor to represent today, together with my colleague Anna San Giorgi and many other colleagues from the EUSAIR countries who are here today. This year, very clear in mind, and they set up the network to support SMEs and organizations in all the international strategies and operativeness, research and innovation. Nowadays, we are the largest with one vision. That's what he was saying. The European Commission had this clear idea that we all had together to put in practice one vision. More internationalization, more research, more innovation. Nowadays, we are the largest network in the world supporting daily companies and organizations, giving advice, helping companies and organizations participating in European projects. We've been helping lots of organizations in participating in European projects, helping them making more business within the internal market. But not just that, because nowadays we are 67 member countries. Projects. So not just the European countries, but all the third countries, and we are 67. It's still an open network, so we are having pipeline other countries. Nowadays we are 600 organizations that are different kind of organizations. We are business like mine, business associations, incubators, chambers of commerce, like some of our EUSAIR colleagues are here today. And we all collaborate, involve, participate to make concrete actions. We started collaborating with the EUSAIR strategy since the very first beginning. As we are the operational arm of the European Commission, we were asked to organize, because we have the contact, daily contact with companies, organizations, etc. We were asked to organize the so-called side events, which is the time when companies and key stakeholders, institutions, and financing companies, financing organizations meet, gather together, exchange ideas, and maybe find business, get more competitive. So the first year, we, as Enterprise Europe Network, in that case my colleagues from Dubrovnik, organized the first B2B event. Last year, it was Ioannina's turn. This year, it was our turn in Palermo. And we have an increasing number in Catania, sorry, this year. And we keep on having an increasing number of participation. It was the first time, it was the experimental B2B that we had 100 meetings. This year, now, we had more than 455 meetings. That means that this will bring a lot of concrete results for companies, institutions, organizations, financial support, etc. We had one challenge more this year.
Yeah, please brief because we have to
just
close
the last
session.
word,
Yes.
because we were, as this year is the Europe-China tourism year,
Yes.
we were asked to involve some Chinese operators. So thanks to the support of our EN Chinese partners, we ensured the participation of 20 Chinese very important operators, so hopefully we'll be more competitive.
Okay, hopefully, yes.
And concrete.
We are probably
And
talking about
concrete.
that in the next panel. I don't know if there are any questions more. Yes, please. Could
Thank
please
you.
identify for the audience? Yes.
Mitya Britzel, Pillar 3 Coordinator, Quality of Environment. I would like just to maybe ask, but to recommend as my, let's say, chair of today, very important, I would say, discussion, and Mr. Oliviero Montenegro presented already, I believe, very clear vision how to go forward for better quality of life in the Adriatic Ionian region. What I believe is part of the vision, which we shared all here. It's something what I would really like to ask all of you, my colleagues, the TSG coordinators, European Commission, and the other stakeholders, taking into account local communities, governments, and multi-level, let's say, issues, and NGOs partners as well. Talking about macro-regional cooperation, and we heard yesterday a lot about also simplification, clear messages, and communication. Even today, it's all what about? Where is the problem that this not happened? Because, this is my personal experience, we do not want to leave our zone of comfort, to work sectorally, to work, you know, very much, I don't care about you and you, but in general very much, but in fact no. This is the real life. And who will change this? Who will change this? I believe, be really now clear and efficient. We produced at TSG3 the metrics. We invested more than 50% of our time to give the hand, the blue growth, the connectivity, the sustainable tourism to go hand in hand towards the good ecological status in Adriatic and Ionian for the better quality of life. The response to this, to go forward, it's very weak, or let's say very some sort skeptical. Even, sorry to say, on the last governing board of EUSAIR in Brussels, I didn't got the answer what and how to go forward with our product to all of us, to make our step forward more efficient for the better quality of life, for the better tourism, for the better tourist products, but in the same time, better quality of life for the local people on the same side, not just for tourist business as such, and so on. And in the blue, growth and sustainable fishery, if you want, as traditional economic activities, very important for the region, and so on and so on. Sorry, I will stop here. It's very simple. Let's do and take our business here seriously, here and at home. Listen to each other, take seriously existing products, and do next step with responsibility. Not to talk about, do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that brings us directly to the second panel, the political panel with the national coordinators. So I don't know, Mr. Favia, if you want to answer, or if the Professor Bianchi, or one of you. We need the microphone, if please. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I have to
please identify yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Mithat Džemić, EU Funds National Coordinator from Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you.
First, before I thank Mr. Bianchi for his visionary words, and then follow with other comments and possibly questions, I would like to thank to Nicola and the Italian government and Sicilian region and of course the Catania community for the organization of this event. I know because we are sitting together at the governing board, that Nicola dedicated a lot of efforts in organization of this meaningful event. So it seems to me, I have to say that he succeeded, and also he managed to close to the end the chairing of this strategy by Italian side in a very successful way. Also, I have to mention the last evening's event. It was an excellent idea to mix this forum with the one cultural events in this beautiful place of Bellini's Theatre. So, thank you. As I said, I will start from Mr. Bianchi's visionary words and then go to connectivity issue. I have to comment because I managed to take part in almost all workshops of these 2 days. Of course, not in the same time, but part of the time. And I heard this comment in relation to the green transport. And really, that's something that cannot be left in the air without response. Because we are speaking about starting from the same positions. You cannot compare the position of the European Union and the level of development of traffic networks with our region, where, for me, let's say, if I want to reach Zagreb or Belgrade in decent time, I have to spend half a day, not mentioning, I'm looking now at my colleagues from Athens or Sofia. I mean, so first of all, definitely bearing in mind more and more narrow fiscal space in our region, definitely the EU should think about the more grant funds for this problem, for the solving of this problem. When solving this problem, we have to know that with these investments, the EU connecting itself, because we are speaking about connection between Bulgaria, Greece, and other countries in the EU. So yes, it will help us, but also it will connect the Europe. Here also.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
I will, some other questions and comments I will leave for the governing board, but also with regard to the migrations. Since I'm participating in several EU programs, partly or coordinating role, I know that the migration issue is treated as a horizontal problem in almost all of them. But seems to me that now is time to get some comprehensive EU strategy for solving this problem. Of course, the way you divided the types of migration is understandable, but for me, it will be a long-term problem for the EU, knowing the rising of inequalities in the continents that surrounding the EU. So all these people will go through our region to the EU. I believe you don't want our countries became their permanent home while waiting the EU to accept them. Okay. So definitely the problem should be seek in the source of the problems.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know if you want to reply. So then we can conclude if then there are not other questions, the session.
No, thank you so much for this kind of provocation. No,
yes.
I feel that in this room all we are serious and all we are devoted to consider that we are working in a joint program. But because we have also to now define the next step of this joint program, I feel, what was my voice? Was my natural voice. I can play as a singer. my experience of the theater. No, I say we have also helped the coordinators and the Commission to design the new step of this program. I feel that we need to spend more time and also a small part of resources for dissemination, because we obtain success. And you know that one of the issues that we have in this area is that there is also a tendency to consider that we don't have enough success in this kind of program. I consider that we have several results, but we have to disseminate also to all those people which are not here and which are not able to take part in this game. So dissemination is important. In this sense, I feel that what Professor Bianchini said is relevant. I think that we have to involve more the universities and also the training bodies, because it's not easy to cooperate. It's not obvious. You know how difficult it is to cooperate, because it means to have a common capacity to write the project, to evaluate the project, to control the project. To work together is not easy. And for this reason that I think that we have to spend also some resources to empower the universities and the training center to diffuse this idea that because we are working in a global world, there is a minimum scale to stay in the game. And most of our countries, or most of our regions, they risk not to have the minimum scale to stay in the game. And this is important. And I think that we need to be more provocative. We need to be more provocative with the Commission, with the national governments, with ourselves. I think that we need to be more ambitious. And let me say something in conclusion of this visionary idea. Now there is a real disease throughout Europe. And the disease is Europe is too much bureaucracy. I don't see to you, also to me. There is too much meetings, and I'm not saying to us. There is too much everything that is not real things. I feel that our area has an extraordinary opportunity. In this moment that in Central Europe there are this kind of disease, to show that Europe is necessary. And what is relevant for us is that we are considered a marginal area with respect to Europe. If we are able to show that working together we are creating more value for our people, we became central. So this is the ambitious. And we need to be more provocative and ambitious. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bianchi. I think now this is the conclusion. We have to switch the seats, if you don't mind. So I ask you, you want to reply? Okay, I'm sorry. So we cannot stop.
Yeah, just a few words, because we had a question about migrations. I do agree with you when you think that migration is a topic that should be faced by the whole European Union. That's definitely one of the key points, because migration is not necessarily only a movement that is, or a flows that is coming through the Italian peninsula or the Balkan route. As I have mentioned, however, since we are discussing the issue about the macro-region, how the macro-region should, in a sense, also offer opportunities to migrants that not necessarily are crossing the region, but are from the region. and the fact that this can be also a way how to mobilize the European Union to understand the peculiarity of the region. Because one of the key points that very often we see when we are speaking with Brussels is that they are thinking only about the people that are coming from Middle East or Northern Africa, which is not exactly the situation that we are facing, but we have a much more complex situation. And particularly when we are facing countries that are suffering from great depopulation and movement of the population into the cities, there is a question about how to protect the territory, how to support the cohesion of the territory. And this is something that should be, this is a great challenge and should not be avoided. So I think that for this reason we focused on this issue, and we were thinking about the fact that all the subjects involved should give their own contribution. On the other hand, we have to say that the region suffers from lots of geopolitical issues unsettled yet. And this is something that is still affecting the search of the solution. You know very well, recently also in Bosnia, there was a great they say growth of the number of immigrants that are trying to cross Bosnia and cross the Una River in order to go to Croatia. So this has created already problems even in the relation between the Federation and the Republika Srpska. So there are questions that can affect the political framework rather than try to find a common strategy, because there is an interest to manage the situation. This is a very important point, not to treat it as an emergency, but to study a strategy. And this strategy should involve different players, not just only the governments. And this is one of the key points that our, let's say, the recommendation came from our project and our panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Garib, if you want...
Yes, thank you.
I just ask you to, to be
short.
brief, because
I would like to echo what has been said by Patrizia. There are, say, 3 points which are important. In order to cooperate, we should avoid conflicts. Dialogue is extremely important. It's the key issue. In order to cooperate, we should share a vision regarding the future. We need scenarios, and we are working on scenarios. We need inter-pillar coordination. We are doing that, and we have regular, say, inter-pillar coordinating meetings with the pillar coordinators. And we need ideas which are implementable, so they become projects, results, practical results. So the countries who are here, the people who are here, you'll find achievements. Those achievements are extremely important to be there, to get them, and to see them in the short term. The time of words is over. The time for action is now. Thank you.
This is not a good day, the time is over. So this is the question. Thank you for all your contributions. So the question is, how to implement these wishes, these requirements. Here we have all the national coordinators of the different countries, so I ask you please, if you don't mind, to change the seats and let them to sit in the front. Thank you all for the contributions. No, adesso no. So we've got from the Commission, Mr. Jean-Pierre Alcan, Head of Unit DG Region. For Albania, Mrs. Elida Petoshati. For Bosnia-Herzegovina, Mr. Midat Zemic. For Croatia, Mr. Pavle Plamenak. For Greece, Mr. Ioannis Firbas. For Italy, Mr. Nicola Favia. Montenegro, Mr. I'm sorry for the pronunciation, Srđan Zetovic. For Serbia, Mr. Pavle Jankovic, and for Slovenia, Mrs. Bojana Zipat. So just a few seconds to take the place. So I think in this panel it's very important to understand what's going on in terms of macro-regional strategy, what we're talking about with Professor Bianchi first. What are the priorities and how will this cohesion is going to be increased in the next program? First of all, in the post-2020 programming period. So I'd like to, I don't know if you are comfortable, if you have a seat, everyone has a seat. Okay. Feel free to make question after if you want, obviously. So are you okay? We can start the panel? Are you comfortable? Okay. So I was saying that it's very important to understand how to implement all the requirements we have heard from the panelists first. And I'd like to ask to Mr. Alcan, I don't, EU Commission is, you know, we can tell is a service provider, right? So please, do you mind if we've gone here? Thank you, I'm sorry. Is a service provider. So you are supposed to listen to the requirements, right? You heard the request that came up from the countries of this region. They has to be assisted also in building a simple governance and to improve dialogue, to improve cooperation. So we don't need to talk about, I think, we don't need to talk about funds or new regulation or much money for that. Let's talk about your skill to listen. Where and how you can find the room to listen to the requirements, please.
Can you listen or can you hear?
Could you repeat, please? Well, first thing, I will try to find the microphone.
Yes, you need a microphone. Okay.
No questions. So this is
quite the problem with
Oh, I'm sorry.
the acoustic here is not very good. Can you say again your question?
Yes, just to know, I don't want to talk about much money or because you heard all the requirements from the panelists. So it's interesting, I think, to understand how you can help the dialogue and the cooperation, your skill to listen to this requirement, to make room on that.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, for me, the biggest challenge we've heard, and it was well presented, is that a macro-regional strategy is that when it is initiated is a vision, it is an aspiration designed by politicians on things they want to achieve together with very global objectives, creating jobs, increasing stability, with areas of interventions, and with values. And we heard about the values, cooperation, level playing fields, working together, trust. And afterward, the challenge is to put that into action. And this process is extremely complex. And for sure, politicians would like that after the declaration, we would immediately move into ribbon cutting. And it is much more than that. So the role of the Commission is to be first the convener and also the honest broker, because we know that once we speak about implementing a strategy, there are decisions to be taken. There is a fair division of the labor to be reached, of the cost of the effort. So this is something where the Commission may play a role. Then it's also the role of the Commission to be creating the enabling conditions for the strategy to be implemented. And for sure, there we speak about the means, and Commission is not putting the means. We are putting proposals on the table of the budgetary authority so that the means are there. And the means are at the same time the way we can support an easy and efficient implementation, but it is also for sure a question of quantity. And this was also performed through the budget presented by President Juncker just a few weeks ago on the 2nd of May. And for me, I will be very short. We have in this declaration made in Catania a lot of very strong commitment taken by the member states, supported by the Commission, And for us now, it is to see, to be sure that we are all aligned in the programming, because there it refers to the strategic programming of the strategy, so that we can ensure together the synergies of all the means which are on the table. The means coming from the EU budget, and we heard in the presentation that they are coming from very different sources, so that we need to facilitate the coordination of the means. But we need also to define, and that's maybe the most challenging part, we need to define what does success mean for a strategy. By 2027, we are going to look backward, and if we don't define clearly today what the milestones are and where the finish line should be, we will never be able to say that we have been successful. We will never, even if we have been performing superbly well, we need to be able to define where the finish line should be, or at least what are the milestones that we want to achieve. And by the time we go to 2027, we need to be clear about what success does mean. And for me, that's also something which is extremely important, very difficult to achieve, because it means also that we will need to have some arbitrage among priorities. And we know that each priority in a strategy is there because it is important for someone. And then it also means that we need to take on board, not only we are today with representative mostly of the public administration, but we also heard the voice of private sector, we heard the voice of universities, but there is also civil society, there is also the youth to be taken on board. So this is also the way we need to have this bottom-up approach of the strategies, because at the end, the strategy will be successful if we reach a finish line which is perceived as meaningful for all the stakeholders of strategy. So they need to take ownership, and that's maybe one of the key words we have. And I will stop at that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alcan. And if the Commission is ready and to listen to the requirements, right?
We are listening constantly, I can tell you. And also, I hope that there are some requirements, expression of interest that you find in the declaration that will be converted into concrete proposal by the Commission in the next days.
Thank you so much. Mr. Favia, we talked with Professor Bianchi first on the importance of create a greater unity, the need to stand together as a macro region, to having a vision, because the challenges we mentioned comes from the outside. Also, I'm thinking of China, for instance, or other. So you think that more cohesion and more trust you have in between the countries, in between the macro region, better you can treat with other countries, with other challenges from the outside. What do you think?
I mean, this is a region in which we have 8 countries, 4 or 5 languages, 3 religions. We have histories that are very different. I mean, I visited Slovenia for the first time 3 years ago. However, I lost 3 uncles in that area during World War I. I mean, so say something to me. Something has changed over time, and I'm glad. We don't completely understand each other, I mean, when we first met. And the issue of trust are there, interest, small things, and why do we work together? I mean, occasionally when I go to meeting, I say, well, these things I can solve them at home. I don't need to go there. Some others, absolutely, without them I cannot do anything. So, but work with them is very tiresome, as tiresome is some regulations that come from the community, because I mean, but there are reasons why there is a difference among us, and there is a reason why there is a regulation that is so complicated. And however, little by little, we have to build this trust to go forward and to move on, because the bigger challenges are not here. I mean, it's not among us. I mean, indeed, we are neighbors, so we have something in common. At least some public good in common, that is the sea, and that is commonality of cultures, communality. Certainly we are much more similar. You mentioned Chinese, to Chinese, I mean. Doesn't mean that I don't want to collaborate with the Chinese, but I certainly am more similar to a Bosnian than to a Serb than to a... So we have something in common that we have to find, we have to develop, and we have to be able to do business together. And I mean, 30 years ago, we didn't even... I worked at the earthquake in Friuli, and we didn't know what had happened on the other side of the border. We assumed that something had happened because, I mean, our villages on the border got destroyed, but we didn't know what happened on the other side. And thanks God, it didn't happen much, as far as I understand, at least in terms of people that died. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm very happy that things are moving. The first objective of this year for me was to ease up this declaration, to ease up a lot of things. As you well know, I mean, as I show, I have a very exuberant personality, so I'm a little bit overbearing in my approach, but certainly, I mean, at the end, we need to be a little bit ecumenical about certain things. We need to understand the good about humanity and try to establish a common field, a common table in which we have to sit.
But what role, for instance, Italy could have in this process? A particular role? I mean,
Italy
is a big contributor, is financial, the market is highly developed.
Italy is a partner. To me, a strategy is not done by the Commission, it's done by the partners. So the Commission, the regulations, the funds, it's not the object.
It's not that point, yeah.
Maybe because I already have my regulations, my banks and my funds, so maybe I come from my point of view. I mean, somebody else can say a different thing. I mean, so I have to listen to the others. I mean,
we will listen to the others.
Yes, exactly. But I sit at the same table. I'm a partner like everybody else. However, I have a GDP that is 50% of the region at least. 50% of the population, so size-wise, it matters. Therefore, if I ask everybody to put €1 on the table, I better put half of what is required, because size matters. And that's a Saturday. Now, point 6 of the declaration is exactly that. If we do the planning, I put part of the budget, of the Italian budget, and I work as for the little funds that the Europe is going to put, because it's little, I mean, to make a union, to make a federation, to put a block, that's too little. So I propose to put something, some chips on the table, and to identify together as one by one, 8 partners with 8 votes, identify some common projects. So, because indeed, I mean, some areas are less fortunate, in connectivities are less fortunate than others, I mean, so you have to do that. So size-wise matter, financially matter. We have some experts that we can put on the table, but more importantly, we have to, I brought you in a beautiful environment. It's very difficult to talk. I mean, yet 2 days of beauty, I mean, we go out with a smile and with the happiness to meet again, and I think that's part of the approach.
The game. Is there anybody that wants to reply what Mr. Favia said? Do you have the same vision about that or not? I don't know if there is someone that wants to answer. You've got a microphone beside you, so. Who?
Normally, I shouldn't respond to Nicola.
I mean, I'd like to know if you have the same vision. So the problem is that it's not money, it's not funds, but it's collaborate and using the same vision, as Professor Bianchi said first.
Well, yes and no. I mean, these are problems indeed, and they are there. But being a national coordinator for Greece, responsible for the coordination of the structural funds, I would expect more, being involved in this journey towards the achievement of the objectives of the strategy. But at the same time, a lot of the people, maybe here in the audience, are addressing me or Nicola or other colleagues who have the competence and the responsibility for managing the funds.
Yes, I remember. I'm sorry for the audience that you are the national coordinator for Greece.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm famous, don't worry. Come on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
We have to see some tangible results. We need to see implementation. Last year, before our forum, Corina Crețu, the responsible, so to speak, one of the two commissioners mainly responsible for this strategy, sort of addressed all of us on, we have to see implementation.
Yeah.
And I have to say, having about a quarter of a century dealing with structural funds, that there is a huge obstacle and a justified excuse so far for not doing as good as everybody should expect. And what is that? It's the timing of the approval of the strategy and the timing of the approval of the operational programs or other programs that are supposed to be the financing engine of the goals of the strategy. So we have a strategy who was approved well after the approval of the programs, and we have created, which should not be the case, two worlds. One of the managing authorities who have to achieve the targets and the objectives of their programs, and us, who have to go and find financing for the achievement of the objectives and the targets and the goals of the action plan and the strategy. And this has proven to be quite difficult.
And how could we overcome that difficulty?
Right. By finalizing early enough, tomorrow, within a year, not later than a year, a solid exercise between all participating countries, that we go through our strategy again, coordinate, and this is, I agree with Jean-Pierre saying that in the declaration there are specific commitments, one of which says, point 6 of the declaration, that all countries have to coordinate early enough and before the next programming period to agree on specific, concrete projects, targets, etc. And if we do that, believe me, and put it in place, I hope we have not seen the proposal by the Commission. It's expected by the 29th of May on the new CPR, the new common regulation, which I suppose I should expect to say something about how programs should target for the achievements of the goals of macro-regional strategies where they are, of course. Not for everybody, but where they are. So, when in Greece, speaking for my country, are drafting the new partnership agreement and our new operational programs, regional or sectoral programs, we have to see what have we agreed with the other 7 countries, or 8. What have we agreed? Have we agreed on covering this missing link between us and Albania? And we have put it there as an emblematic project? Then the Commission, when we are discussing between us, negotiating on the programs, should say, hey guys, you agreed, you and Albania, you agreed that this is a missing link. And you, in Greece, you'll have to cover by your funds. Albania, on the other hand, has to build the missing link on their part. So we have to prioritize, use the strategy as one of the crucial success factors, seeing where we are going, and use that to prioritize. So we have to choose between a project that does not fulfill achievements or targets for the strategy and does something else for Greece, and we have to prioritize. But if we agree that we are going to do it, we have to deliver. And no excuses should be accepted anymore. The programs and the partnership agreement must be looking straight and honestly towards the strategy. Okay. Now we even have, mind you, programs with the same title. I'm not speaking only about Adrian and EUSAIR. Danube River, it's the same. Same title, different approach, different strategy. This cannot be, in my view, be accepted anymore.
Thank you very much. Do you agree with this vision? For instance, Mr. Pavle Jankovic from Serbia, what do you think? It could be a good way of overcoming problems, difficulties or not?
Thank you. I mean, I always agree with Ioannis. I found out over the years that it's less painful. But perhaps, if you allow me, I would like to take a look at something very similar to this from a point of view of in negotiating EU candidate country. The specificity of our strategy is the fact that we have, at this moment, 4 EU member states. We have also 3 candidate countries and 1 potential candidate. Looking at the management of the actual strategy and going over the years, looking at the examples, how other countries in the strategy manage their work. One thing that clearly pops into mind is the role of the national coordinator. And that role of the national coordinator is a very demanding one. What we now have are national coordinators predominantly who have a number of other roles in their daily business. And sadly, the national coordinators are expected to also reflect, to think and to project on what the strategy needs to accomplish. To be able to help the TSGs, to be able to help their policymakers, to help them understand what the strategy actually can accomplish. That is impossible for anyone whose work as a national coordinator is actually a fringe activity. So I would hope that in the very near future, we would have the role of the national coordinators as a full-time job, and that the countries would realize that this is the kind of, I would say, expense that needs to be incurred in order to derive the benefits from the strategy. Pretty much the same applies for the TSG coordinators as well. I mean, their workloads are also enormous. To add to all this, there is also the topic of the discrepancy or the asymmetry of the funds available for the projects. And that is a profound difference. The EU member states have at their disposal both the ASIF, the Connecting Europe facility, considerable national funds and so forth. If you look at the other 4 not yet EU member states, as I like to call them, you would see that our entire, for example, IPA budgets or national budgets are not sufficient to build even an important infrastructure project such as a highway or a double-track railway that would connect our region, much less other things. So this is something that we need to consider in the future. We've had the sentence of leveling the playing field in our declaration, but the question is, how do we do this in practice? So this inevitably leads me to the 3 no's. And the more I think about the 3 no's, and the more I think, I don't know if anyone knows the American game that they play in schools. It is called bobbing for apples. You have a big cauldron of water, and the kids have their hands tied behind their back, and they're trying to reach for the apple with their mouth. So this is what I see as the 3 no's. The 3 no's are bobbing for apples. Things are out there, they're available, we can see them, but how to reach them? In light of that, and I really believe this, the more I think about the policy of the 3 no's, the more I think that it needs to be profoundly and thoroughly reconsidered. The strategy simply cannot work this way. But on a brighter note, and I don't want to finish on a negative note, on a brighter note, I do see something else. And I also see that our knowledge and capacities to implement the strategy are growing. over the years. We're learning as we go along. And this will be very important now, because very soon we're not going to be 8, we're going to be 9. The 8 of us are at various stages of junior or middle school in terms of the strategy. But the newcomer, FIREM, is going to be in the 1st grade. So we're going to all together need to work. We're all going to work together. And this is going to keep building a sense of community. The Adriatic Ionian region needs to be a community. This is a decision we need to think about, and this is something we need to start feeling and acting upon. We will also learn how the system works, as Colin said, and work the system, which is not to say that the system cannot be changed and improved. That we also need to think about. So finally, to accomplish all this, hard work, yes, but also a lot of goodwill from all of us, jointly.
Thank you so much. I'd like to know the point of view from Albania. Mrs. Alida Petoshati, the director of the region and neighboring countries. How does EUSAIR, according to you, contribute to improving what we are talking about, the regional cooperation in this area?
Grazie, Francesca. We've acquired a great deal of information this morning, many wise suggestions, proposals, and also from this exchange with our colleagues. The main theme that is being pointed out repeatedly is interaction and cooperation. Western Balkans were mentioned repeatedly this morning, and I would say from the beginning that the countries that are already part of this strategy and the Adriatic Ionian Initiative are very well positioned in terms of having, besides them, EU member countries, part of 4 EU member countries part of the strategy, to help foster better preparedness towards EU. Because as Albania, we believe that the main philosophy of regional cooperation and macro strategies is, of course, for us, have a prosperous region, and from our perspective, prepare our countries towards EU accession. That can be done, of course, through fostering political dialogue, good neighborly relations, helping not only to improve cooperation, but also, in our case, in our region, heal difficult legacies from the past, but also it can be done through sectoral development. And that's where EUSAIR has a crucial role to play, like other regional initiatives or EU-led initiatives like Berlin Process or other initiatives. As a matter of fact, we should all be aware that our region needs feasible instruments to build European standards. This is a main shared goal. If it is that each of us will join sooner or later, European Union. Because by fostering standards, we raise and build a model of European accession. So in these terms, we look at EUSAIR as a very important and feasible platform for reaching our goals through its 4 important pillars like connectivity, mobility, blue economy, blue growth, and quality tourism and sustainability. So beyond any doubt, what we're doing now in the region through networking, mapping our region by wanting to put in place waterways, rail, road corridors, cultural corridors to better reach out and foster those standards that we were talking this morning, are the best incentive to actually foster regional cooperation. Thinking about EUSAIR and regional cooperation, I would say, and I would very much converge here with my previous colleagues, Nicola, my Greek colleague, and also Pavle, that it is very important to streamline cooperation on the existing achievements that we have done so far in the 3 years of since the launching of the strategy. As a matter of fact, we have projects in place together, and on that basis, on that ground, it would be really important to get together our synergies again in order to streamline cooperation. For example, pollution has been mentioned a lot here as today and yesterday as an important dimension in terms of sustainable environment, development, and tourism. Our countries are coming together in order to put this priority within EUSAIR as well. For example, recently we have had, as Albania, Montenegro, and Croatia, a meeting lately to consider how we could strengthen capacities together and come together with projects within EUSAIR for that aspect. Or with Serbia, lately we had our Minister of Tourism meeting and looking at how we could prepare package tourism together in order to improve our tourism capacities and showcase our cultural values, our cultural heritage. This, Nicola, means that we have a vision despite our differences. In that aspect, I would also highlight the need.
Yes, please, because we need time. Time is
highlight the need to
okay,
to not only to streamline cooperation, but also to put together and advance concrete means for that. We have lots of financial instruments in place. It's been repeatedly put forward during this session, and that's why we should come together in order to prioritize and see how we could make call for proposals.
Okay.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. So the vision is the word that I want to ask to the Croatia, Mr. Pavle Plamenak, to be a little bit more concrete. You took action in the Northern Adriatic. So I'd like to know how you national coordinators are using your programs, your specific programs, to improve the growth of the entire area, the entire system.
Yeah. Does it work?
No, I think you have to switch off.
That's not working. Okay, this one is working. As a national coordinator...
I don't think it's working. It's working? I don't think so. Let's try.
Okay. This one is
your mouse is not working.
Oh, my mouse is not working. Great. I'm not sure.
Okay, now it's working.
Thank you very much. As a national coordinator for Croatia, I have a lot of operational experience in EU funds, and 3 years ago when I started to work on EUSAIR, for me it was obvious from the beginning that this financial period, that's what I was repeating all the time, is time for putting EUSAIR on the map. Because EUSAIR was too late to be put in the operational programs, and in Croatia we have two inter-programs that have a way to they have selection criteria that are giving additional points to projects that are contributed to EUSAIR strategy. But our national cooperation programs, we don't have that opportunity. We only have opportunity of monitoring the results, so it's in a way post-labeling. But now, 3 years ago, nobody knew anything about EUSAIR. In these days, everybody knows what EUSAIR is, and now on Tuesday we are waiting for a new regulation, and we are hoping that our hopes that macro-regional strategies are going to be integral part of future European Union is going to be integrated in Interreg programs and also into national operational programs. And the most important thing for me is coordination. Because right now we have 34 Adrian programs that are all contributed to EUSAIR goals that started the implementation. We have a targeted call for EUSAIR in Adrian also for tourism and environment. In few months we are opening call for transport and blue growth innovation. Yes. And the problem is that Interreg programs are the programs that are only, how to say, they're supporting soft measures. And we only small-scale infrastructure, pilot projects, something like that. And now we will get projects that are directly contributing to EUSAIR goals, but we need capitalization. We need something that national programs, but again, a national program, we have 6 or 8, or I don't know how many hundreds in every of the projects. So it's not enough if in Croatia we are capitalizing our project of the EUSAIR. We need a coordination between all national operational programs to capitalize the results of Adrian project in all countries that were involved with. So for me, coordination between policies, between operational programs, between countries involved in EUSAIR is of most importance for the future of macro-regional strategies. And of course, again, we are hoping that on Tuesday we will get our hopes on. So we are hoping for a much better future for operational programs and for macro-regional strategies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The impression is that you all agree on that. So what is how to implement that? I'd like to know from Mrs. Bojana Zipot from Slovenia. So what according to you is necessary in macro-regional strategy to be visible in the future?
Thank you very much. This one is working?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll join you.
We can sing together now. So my short intervention goes...
Just a little bit closer so we can hear you.
Yes, it goes very much in line with what Mr. Pavle from Serbia was already saying, and with the panel that discussed issues before. I believe that keeping macro-regional strategies up to date is a kind of warranty that we will have them also in the future. And so it means that we need to act and be active already today if we want them in the future as well. So for Slovenia, and you heard this so many times, we are in 3 macro-regional strategies, but this gives us a kind of opportunity to have an overview of different macro-regional strategies, and they do differ among on character, on countries involved, and on dynamics and other things as well. But one thing is common, and this is important also while thinking about the future. They speak about the cooperation, about partnership, about confronting common challenges, and also following the same goal. So this is the added value of macro-regional strategies, and it's much more than national interests, and it's much more than only numbers of projects. It's macro-regional projects, and it's also about the process. And I will just mention now some elements or moments that are also crucial for the future. And first of all, this is that we should be open to the learning process. while we have different macro-regional strategies, even the Baltic one, we need to exchange experiences, knowledge, know-how among us. And here I'm reflecting to the events that were already organized involving experts from 4 macro-regional strategies on transport, for instance, on climate change, on communication and others. And secondly, for delivering results, a solid basis is needed, and this is an effective governance structure. First of all, at home, so nationally speaking, and then macro-regionally as well. And of course, for effective work, a political support as well is crucial, because with no political support, there is no administration support and no finances as well. And we know that macro-regional outcomes are also reflection of dedicated work of people, of persons, and they give their own personal touch to the process as well. So I would just like to take also this opportunity and thank all the actors involved in these macro-regional stories, also Slovenian ones, of course. They have to make synergies if they want to survive these turbulences. And another thing is, we were speaking about communication and about visibility of macro-regional strategies, because without communicating, we do not exist. Our work is not seen and visible. So we need to go out of macro-regional world to other stakeholders. And therefore, Slovenia has organized an event last year, a conference on media and communication, on which we gathered experts from macro-regional strategies and experts from media people, journalists, and so on. And here are some very basic outcomes. We know that macro-regional stories differ from media stories, but we need each other. So we need to translate the stories to normal people, to ordinary people, and we need simple language to do that as well. So it's about storytelling and it's about simple language. And we were told that we need to make short and clear messages to come from the events.
Could I please ask you to go to your conclusion, because time is running. We
Yes.
have
Okay.
to make the closing up.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And just to conclude,
Okay.
No, but I wanted to let you know also about maybe a refreshing idea also for all of us. We should start thinking about including young people into our activities on macro-regional stories, because they bring new energy, dynamism, and also they open to new technologies. And I just wanted to know that Slovenia is organizing a very short event, workshop with children, and they will discuss cultural heritage and ecological issue, communication and migration. And the results of this event will be shown on our traditional Mediterranean event in September. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the rush, but you know, time is over. I don't know if Mr. Midat Zamic, we heard before, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, wants to adjust something, for instance, concerning how can all the stuff we are talking about can help the accession process to the EU. Just briefly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, speaking after all colleagues told almost everything, it will be just repeating. So maybe just to emphasize a few things. Let's say knowing each other is very important. When I say knowing it, I'm referring to the knowing the rules they are working with in their regular job. So probably the participants from non-EU member states should learn more about the procedures related to the European structural investment funds, and on the other side, EU member states representatives should learn more about the IPA II regulation, which is for us kind of holy book. I mean, so also in this relation is when we speak about participation of non-EU member states, the role of EU delegations in our countries is very important. Besides the DG NEAR, but not the department that Colin represented, is for us are much more important the country departments in the DG NEAR that has a very, very important role in the planning processes. Also, with regard to BIH participation, we have to say that we will hopefully in much better position in period 2018-20, because due to some political problems, we were, I have to say, forbidden to use EU funds in certain sectors, but these sectors are unfortunately, let's say, treated under Adriatic Ionian strategy. So in the coming period, we'll be in position to use IPA funds for the sectors of environment and hopefully energy. And also last year, we already are in position to use it for transport sector. So this gives kind of strong push for our participants in the thematic steering groups to have something that can count on. And to finish, let's say, I will also underline the importance of path to our final goal to this process. We are at the beginning, I'm sure on this, and for me, and I believe I could hear from some other colleagues here, that all this process is also very important, maybe even more important at this stage, and we'll, let's say, collect the results maybe later on.
Yeah.
But
we hope, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So I'd like to end with the opinion from Montenegro, from the national coordinator of Montenegro. Is going to take the presidency for the next year, so we can start a sort of summing up of this debate, please.
Thank you. It's interesting to share with you that as you could hear, and as you can see, we will inherit an initiative and a lot of hopes transmitted in a rather long declaration, but unfortunately not that many certainties. And we will be, of course, guided by priorities, which is the promotion of regional cooperation, the promotion of our common values, common goods, common ideas, which we have here. And we'll be also guided by the fact that cooperating in this area, we are not only doing this for any single member states, but we can also achieve concrete results in many other areas, because blue growth, economy, tourism, any single line of our communication within this initiative can be connected, for example, with the implementation of the EU action plans for the countries which are not members of the EU, but in the same time for all of the countries for the implementation of SDGs for the development agenda under the UN umbrella. So any single activity which we conduct in this area can be transmitted and have a clear impact otherwise. For us, it will be of great help, the fact that we have established the trio presidency. So we will try to use the smooth leadership of Italy until now, and we will try to be involving every day our colleagues from Serbia, which will succeed. I hope that we will manage to foster some of the processes in coordination of different financial mechanisms to avoid duplication. And I have to share with you, it will be a great challenge, because for a small country, for a small, I would say, administration, it will be a great, experience to keep all the lines of our common initiative on the right way, And I can really just repeat what we were sharing yesterday, the ministerial meeting, again, the forum, that we will have full support from everyone. And that next year, when we meet again in Budva or somewhere on the coast of Montenegro, we could share some more positive thoughts, which would be, I hope, strengthened by decisions from Brussels. And that in this segment, we will be really giving a new perspective, a new future for the organization. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to have the handover just in a few minutes. I want to listen to Mr. Vasilis Telis from Greece. So you have to...
we have a slightly different.
Okay. So you want to conclude with the summing up of the debate, and then we're going to...
No. I let Ioannis do the summing up. The trio was supposed to do the summing up. If you want, of what we just said.
So what we can say about this debate?
You want
what
Vasily?
are the main,
Vasily,
the many
if
issues?
You want.
Yeah.
It's up to you. As you prefer. I mean, I let you to be the last one. I think seniority and experience matter. So it's for respect. But if it's Vasily, I mean, of course. So as you prefer. But let's say
so
what
Nicola, you can...
I had
he's coming.
my trio presidency part of the summing up, because especially I have to answer a very specific question. I think most of us talked about an issue of coordination.
Yeah, so welcome to Mr. Vasilis Tselios. So what can we say, what can say more for a summing up of this debate, according to you? Thank you so much.
Hello everybody. I can say that the motto of this forum, united we stand, divided, I knew that it was united we stand, divided we fall. But there's some progress certainly, and we have united we stand, together we progress. And we have to work on that. Two things, sorry I was running because I were in...
Yeah, I'm sorry, because it's okay.
Two things I have learned from this strategy. The first thing was that we have to think out of the box. And the second thing is that we are getting to have a tradition. It is the tradition of the EUSAIR forum every May. There's another tradition that this forum starts to be organized without commissioners, but it is up to them. Sorry. Now, we had an ambitious declaration yesterday on which we worked, and we continued our work yesterday and today. We had a declaration that goes beyond the current financial period. It goes even to the next. We had some news this year of the Italian chairmanship having the trio presidency because of the withdrawal of the Commission. We had the accession of the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia to the Adriatic and Ionian initiative. And then we have some results from the 4 pillars. And I want to thank my colleagues for informing me on the results of them. I will be very brief. On Pillar 1, we have that the work of the thematic steering group is becoming more concrete through the identification and prioritization of projects of transnational interest and macro-regional impact. We had that there is still room for better use of existing funds as well as promotion of private investment for the implementation of EUSAIR and the Blue Growth Strategy. The synergy of all actors, national, regional, and local, offer the possibility of better use of financial tools and create dynamic networks of stakeholders, strengthening the cooperation between countries. Learning from each other is a constant process to the mapping of funding resources and is using them in its most optimum way. The cooperation among managing authorities is a key factor in achieving of results. On connectivity, the main theme of this forum, we had some news that were going on the implementation. We had the announcement that projects are very close, some projects are very close to completion, like the Adriatic Ionian highway, with Croatia having almost finalized its part of this long and very useful highway, which will also be very useful for tourism, for the development of the whole area. And then we go one step further. We started discussing the road safety. This means that we are very close to finalize the infrastructure, and then we have to go to the human, to the safety of people traveling on these roads. I have also to underline the growing interest to support the development of a strategic transport master plan for the macro region with emphasis in port development. If we have the roads between our countries, they have to end somewhere, and the goods have to be transferred or to get transferred in from the third countries, which might be Asia, Americas, Africa, Australia. I mean, having the roads only between us, and on this I have to underline the usefulness of the action plan and all the roads that they have to connect the Balkan countries. Then we have to use them the best way we can. On environment, I don't have so many things, but I have only one, which I think it is very important. It is the declaration of the war against plastics in the Adriatic and Ionian seas. And I think that this will improve the life of all of us, and certainly of the next generations as well. And finally, on tourism, which is a sector that can offer jobs to many young people, and it is a crucial job for our economies. We had the interest to continue our cooperation, probably to be more competitive to other regions, and finally, to better develop our region. As general remarks, I see that the EUSAIR has to be adapted to other policies and financial instruments that are all around. I was disappointed to see that in the Sofia summit there wasn't even a single reference to macro-regional strategies, and on this I'm referring also to the Danube strategy, but also to the works that and the key projects that have to take place in the region. But I'm sure that macro-regional strategies, EUSAIR and the Danube strategy can support, can be fora where these policies can be better developed and produce more results. The EUSAIR has also to be adapted to the financial instruments, whatever if they are private, if they are EU, or if they are IFIs, international financial instruments. For that, we need the alignment of projects. They told me that there is money from employment, and this is very important because unemployment is a problem that we face, all of us, and I am afraid that it is, when it comes to young people, then we have to find ways, could be education, for me it's the first, that in order to improve their lives and the life of all of us, finally. So, adaptation is needed. We have to work and to strike the right balance between tradition and innovation, and it is up to us, I mean all of us, to maximize the impact of financial instruments. We also have to improve our visibility and to combine regional interests with all external interests. Finally, I want to thank the Italian chairmanship for our excellent cooperation and for the organization of this meeting. I will pass the floor to the real chairmanship of this trio, wishing to Montenegro all the best and certainly will support it in its chairmanship. My final word is that we now work together almost as the excellent orchestra we heard yesterday. Now Montenegro will be the maestro for the next year. And I wish to Serbia and Croatia to meet them at the final of the World Cup. Thank you very much. Nicola, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Tselius. So Nicola, if you want to conclude, so after that we've got the handover.
No, I mean, what we just heard is exactly, I mean, perfume to my nose is music to my ears. I mean, I thank you very much, and indeed, what you just concluded is reverberate very well for what I wanted to say. Policies and financial instruments are modified. Sofia Summit doesn't mention the macro strategies. There are plenty of EU and IFI instruments around, so just we have to put our act together and be able there to pick up these resources. We have to balance tradition and innovation, and that's why we had some side events that are supposed to propose some areas of future intervention, especially in the area of research and innovation. And it's very unfortunate that some programs that brought so much to our region, I mean, maybe are not going up in the future. And I don't know, I refer particularly to a program that is not very popular, but Central Europe, but brought so much connection between the south and the north, all the way to the Balkans. We brought some exchange of research that plenty of my colleagues told me has been very fruitful. And certainly we have to spread in the region. And I reverberate also what Slovenia mentioned before about these exchanges. Indeed, internal and external challenges. The internal challenges have been the one that I think for the first time, I mean, we concluded a declaration in 2 hours and a half. I mean, for the internal challenges, we have plenty, but as being overcome little by little. The external challenges are the one coming. Because, I mean, I could do a list, but I would rather conclude in a more positive notes. But the external challenges are the serious one, especially where this region has been traditional in the region in which international conflicts deflagrated, explodes, because of several reasons, historic reasons. Traditionally, international contradiction is here that come to detonate. Therefore, this effort of peace and dialogue is fundamental, exactly to keep the spark away, because gasoline will be poured in, but we have to keep the spark away. And that's the role that, you know, I am very critical of the Commission most of the times, but that's the Commission has a very important role to play, to assist us exactly to keep some dangers away and to help us to better govern our activities, simplify, to make our life a little bit easier, because country coordinator will not be a full-time job, unfortunately.
No one of you.
I wish, but I really wish, but I don't. It's not going to happen. And well, I know for my country at least. So everybody, you perfectly conclude this year of activities, and you did it for Italy, and I agree completely with what you said. I want to just summing up very, very quickly this forum. Everybody today, everybody. I mean, Patrizio Bianchi provoked us, but what everybody answered to his provocation, which we just picked up a few of them, but it's the need of coordination. Coordination among us. Indeed, the TSGs are the engine of implementation of projects, but it's here that the coordination has to happen. I give you the example of the SCD3. You brought a fantastic matrix for planning, for programming. But this year that I have also to take into consideration the push from TG2 infrastructure and the call of all the countries that want more infrastructure and the danger it brings to the environment. Yet, we have to balance this decision, and this is the environment that is going to happen. And that's why a lot of time I ask for more coordination among the dialogue among national coordinators, keeping the DSG a little bit out, but of course we have to further push your activities, but we also need to dialogue among ourselves to balance it. And this is something that the facility point understood very well, because in my opinion that project was designed unbalanced, but they are doing this initiative next week to bring us together and to start some activities. So I do appreciate the effort that has been done. The challenges are outside. And in my opinion, they're going to be even more dangerous in the process. I mean, it's 15 years that the foreign policies in general have been more aggressive and more aggressive. What is happening in the south of the Mediterranean doesn't make me very happy, and it is reverberating already in our regions. I mean, the immigrants issue, etc., etc. So, keeping some programs within Jean-Pierre's, keeping some programs within at close to us, to our hearts. For example, the MP-Med programs, the Central Europe program, is something that would be very much in our interest, because indeed, even if we just reached a very fragile but harmony, we know that is dealing also with the South is where the problems come. So a little bit of bringing here this cohesion, this desire of peace, traditionally reached this result. And working in the south of the Mediterranean is even harder than working in the Balkans, but please keep it as such. And yes, I mean, work to avoid exactly this turbulence, keep them out, and continue this exchange with the North to learn more, exchange with the MED program, which of course is doing a fantastic methodological work, and I appreciate my colleagues of Panoramed as Regione Emilia-Romagna, which is also Adrian, which I appreciate very much. And I appreciate first and foremost my colleagues actually from the EI, because indeed I learn how this intergovernmental association, it's really constituted the basement on which we can sit around. And I came to learn very late in my life the incredible value of Foreign Office work. I mean, I was born economist, I didn't think about that. So, and I remain at disposal of Montenegro for the coming year.
Nicola, I'm sorry, it's my business, and the time is really over because we have to do the handover ceremony. So I don't know if you want to conclude, if you want to say something more, or that's it. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, all contributors, all the audience that follows us. And in just few minutes, I think we have to arrange the podium so we can make the handover ceremony to change the presidency from Italy to Montenegro. So please join us in just few minutes. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.